Hi everybody, how you doing? Happy Tuesday. Does my hair look like that? Well, I'm getting it cut today. Let's see here. We have Tracing Roots, Telling Tales, Tuesdays. Genealogy with Donna, and this is episode 30. I have been doing this since last November, and I think that's pretty good. Today we're going to talk about family trees and the forgotten branches, digging into overlooked ancestors. The invisible ancestors. The perfect example was the one where I had heard tales of a Paul being a child that my grandmother had and that he had passed away. Upon further review and a little bit down the road from my mother passing away. So this was probably, gosh, well, we went and visited his grave. Well, actually, where he's buried, there's no gravestone there, but he is in the children's section of the cemetery in Los Angeles. And I was able to find out his middle name is Brewster. So now it's trying to find out what made Brewster significant. And we've kind of lost that because it wasn't ever talked about in our family. My mother talked about it. But nobody else, I never heard anybody else talk about it. And so now it turns out that the name Brewster was very famous in the area that my grandmother grew up in, my grandfather too. And so it may be from there, but I have not found a direct line yet. It's always yet, because you never know what you're going to find. Now, it was interesting that when Jody was researching the Waltons, my father's side of the family, that we found that the story that I had heard about my grandmother Aurora having twins actually was true. The fact that they both died was not true. So there was an Arthur prior to my father, and it was Arthur Camille, 2 L's, and that baby passed away the same month it was born. I think it was born on the 4th of November, and it died on the 27th of November from malnutrition, is what it says. I believe it was an underdeveloped twin and wasn't able to last due to perhaps some congenital defect of some sort. Anyway, those are the 2 that we have found that are invisible. That doesn't mean there isn't more out there, but we just haven't found them yet. Maiden name mysteries. You'll like this one. So my great-grandmother was a Judkins. And when I go back to trace the lineage, and I do lineage so it isn't just my direct descendant, it will be all the brothers and sisters, all the aunts and uncles, etc. And so I was able to find out my great-grandmother Judkins married a good one. But back in her tree, there was an uncle or an aunt that was a good one. Now, how that happened was possibly how she met her husband, Richard, unclear, but there was a Goodwin name back behind that. So I find that interesting that Goodwin cropped up in the family tree prior to her marrying Richard. Kind of interesting. But keeping in mind, this is the late 1800s. This is in Maine. It wasn't Portland, it was Bangor, Maine. Not a big community, so maybe there aren't a lot of people, to choose from, so to speak. The next one is the collateral research, when you're studying the siblings, cousins, in-laws, and how you can fill in the blanks that way. I do the whole trees, as I've said, not just the direct descendants, and I find all kinds of things. Interestingly enough, I was researching Mike's Uncle Elmo this past weekend, and I found that and this was in Missouri, and I found that he had a Missouri Supreme Court justice in that line, and there was also a judge and a senator. So that was pretty good. This was in the 1800s, but I thought that was very cool to have that. The next one is the cluster research, introducing the idea to friends, associates, neighbors, and see how they can help track down an ancestor. It might be that they can go, you've got a friend in Massachusetts, and they can go to an area or a historical society or a library and do some research for you. That really helps, and perhaps you can return the favor. And that happens all over the place. Please keep in mind that church records also they're just a wealth of information. When we went back to Connecticut, I had my father's employment permit. So he was 15 and a half during the Depression, needed to go to work. And I was able to find his address when he was 15. And I was able to go there with my little clipboard and knock on the door, a big, huge house. Knock on the door, and the lady that answered, I asked her, I said, "Are you connected with the Waltons in any way?" She said no. And I said, "Could you tell me, is this a huge house?" And she said no, it'd been split up into 3 addresses, and so that it was no longer, when his father had died in 1966, my grandfather they had sold the estate, so that house had sold. But she was able to give me some information about where the church was. It needed to be a Catholic church. It needed to be one of the original ones back in the 30s, and she was able to give me that information. So we went to that church, and though the secretary of the church was not very friendly, I had interrupted her day, she was accommodating and was able to go through, and these are big, huge black ledgers. I mean, like from banks long ago that you might see. And she opened up the ledgers from 1939 when my grandmother Aurora passed away. She was able to tell me what cemetery that she was buried in. This lady was also able to look up my father and find out his confirmation name. And what else was she able to give me? Anyway, I would, it wasn't digitized, so it, took time, but what a plethora of information. It was just great. And from that information, we were able to go to that cemetery. I was able to find the grave site of my grandmother, my grandfather, and my uncle, the oldest son. And so that was really cool. And there were 4 together, but one was empty. So I went back to the cemetery office and I said, that looks like a plot of 4. Well, who's going to be buried in there? And they said, well, it's up to the family, whoever the owner is now. And at that point, I do not know who the owner would be, but they could designate who could be buried there. So I thought that was really cool too. So you learn stuff if you just ask the questions. You learn stuff if you knock on a door that you're hesitant to knock on, but you want the information, and there isn't another way. I mean, I did not know this lady. I have no idea what her name was, but she was readily available to help me try and figure out where I could go next to get the information. And I appreciated her help, and I thanked her profusely. And that's how I have been able to come along on this genealogy path that seems to take, I don't seem to ever have enough time, but I am starting to take more time to eke out, and I thank Jody. She really has made a difference in having me, continue down the path and reignite the passion that I had in years past. Now, I can tell you one thing. Interestingly enough, that it it just seems to be down the rabbit hole for lengths of time, and you get lost in it. It's just amazing the things that you can find, the articles. The newspapers would run back in the 20s and 30s about who got married. It was an intimate setting. It was in the home. There was a small gathering. They went on their wedding trip. It's just fun to see. And with newspapers.com and my membership, I'm able to get those articles. So that is very cool, very exciting. And I hope you stick with me this year. The end of the year, I should find more information. I'm certainly willing to share. If any of you have a tree and I can help in any way to break down block walls or give you suggestions, I'm more than readily available to do that for you. Anyway, you guys take care. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Bye-bye.